Because I work largely on sexual selection. This is a major area of research in my lab. I hope that it is an enjoyable lecture for you people as well, in part because almost everything, if you go outside of this building and look around you in the natural world, if not everything, many of the things that we find beautiful or awe-inspiring or entertaining in the world around us are the products of sexual selection. So, displays like that bowerbird hat or the brightly colored feathers of other birds or flowers smelling so good the way they do or looking as beautiful as they do, all of these are the products of sexual selection. Many people think even that, the huge brain size that we have as humans that allows us to do calculus or compose operas or write novels, that is probably largely the product of sexual selection as well. So sexual selection is sort of all around us. Start off with a clicker question just to get sort of warmed up, get our brains working. Who would say something like this? Who said the sight of a feather in a peacock's tail makes me sick? Peacocks, if you've ever seen peacocks at the zoo, you know that male peacocks have these impressive long trains or tails with these eye spots. They're really, really awesome. Why would any human have beef with a trait as beautiful as the long tails that male peacocks have? Who would say such a thing? Emma Darwin is the wife of Charles, in case you're wondering who she is. You probably recognize the other names on the slide. All right. Okay, yeah, good job. It was actually Charles Darwin himself, even though later in his career he went on to recognize the importance of sexual selection. When he was first developing his ideas about selection and evolution, Darwin and others really were concerned that traits like this, traits like the long tail that a male peacock has, or maybe the fancy dances and seemingly like wasted architectural attempts of the bowerbird that we just saw, that these were very difficult to reconcile with the idea of natural selection. So there are some traits in many species, at least species typically of animals, but also some plants, in species where we have two sexes, males and females, which of course is not every species. But very often we will see that members of one sex, and usually it's the males, not always, members of one sex very often express these really extra or elaborate or over-the-top traits, whether it's extremely bright feathers or a very long tail or giant antlers sprouting out of their heads or brightly colored bristles if you're a peacock spider. And these traits are puzzling in a sense for a couple of reasons. First of all, very often it would seem as though these traits are actually detrimental to survival. It may be metabolically expensive to grow a very long tail. If you have something like a long tail or brightly colored feathers, doesn't that make you more conspicuous to predators or easy for them to grab and catch? And yes, many of these traits do actually reduce survivorship. Even if even if you're confident that, oh no, animals wouldn't have these traits, males wouldn't have these traits if they didn't benefit survivorship, there's also the problem that these traits are only found in one sex. So if having brightly colored bristles is so important, if it helps the male peacock spider survive, then why don't all the peacock spiders have it too? Why don't the females have it as well? So they seem to reduce survivorship. They're only found in one sex. And these were, of course, originally seen as a challenge to the idea of selection being an important evolutionary force. We know now that they're completely compatible with the idea of selection, but that these traits are favored by sexual selection. In other words, a sexually selected trait is something that increases the mating success of the individual that has the trait, that increases their ability to get access to members of the opposite sex. They can impress potential mates, or they can beat up other individuals of their species and get access to potential mates that way. Sexually selected traits. And Darwin eventually did come around on the idea of sexual selection, and his second most famous book, after The Origin of Species, was all about, well, it was about human evolution, but also about sexual selection, and he has these beautiful, beautiful thoughts about how birds are such great examples of sexual selection, which they are, but sexually selected traits happen in many, many other species as well, not just birds. Now, raise your hand if you've come across the terms male-male competition and female choice. Okay, yeah, just about everybody. All right. When sexual selection is taught in high school, it's usually taught using those two terms. And it can be helpful when we consider sexual selection or the types of traits that sexual selection favors, to ask, okay, are we dealing with something that's like a weapon, like very large body size in these elephant seals? Or are we dealing with something that is more of an ornament, like dancing ability or brightly colored feathers or the ability to make a bower in these bower birds? I don't love the term male-male competition or the term female choice, because as we'll see, there are actually some species where it's actually females that are competing with each other for access to males. And there are some species where males are much more choosy than females are. So I don't love those terms, but that's what is very commonly used. I prefer the terms intra-sexual selection. This is, in traits like weapons that allow males to directly, or I just did it, allow individuals of one sex to directly compete or fight for access to members of the other sex. You can say that's intra-sexual selection. And some traits are favored by intersexual selection. There's still obviously a very competitive element here, in this case between male bowerbirds, but they're not necessarily competing directly with each other. They are just each trying to be the sexiest male in the forest so that the female bowerbirds come down and mate with them. But really, it is all about competition, whether that's direct competition or indirect competition. And in most species, although as we'll see, not all, sexual selection operates mainly on males. In other words, in most species, males are the ones exhibiting these sexually selected traits, whether that's big body size or big antlers, improved fighting ability, or whether it is ornaments like having a beautiful song or really brightly colored scales, if you're a fish. Males are competing with each other, whether it's directly or indirectly, and females of most animal species are much more choosy than males are. Females will sort of sit back and choose the most attractive male. Why is it that way and not the other way around most of the time? And like many things in biology, this comes back to good old anisogamy. It's the difference in gamete size between males and females. Because remember from the last lecture, males, by definition, are the sex that produces the smaller gametes, and females are the sex that produces the larger gametes. So eggs are metabolically expensive to produce. Sperm are very cheap to produce. Sperm is cheap. Eggs are expensive. And so even if the individuals that produce these gametes don't provide any other care to their offspring, the female has already invested much more in the resulting offspring than the male has. Okay? So, and it's this difference in investment, the fact that females have fewer gametes and they're bigger, and males have more gametes and are smaller. They have smaller gametes that drives a lot of the general pattern we see across species, where for most species, we'll get to the exceptions in a while, males are competing for access to females and not the other way around. So up until a few years ago, this would be the point in the class when I would play a fun little, I thought it was fun, a fun little active learning game called the mating game. And I would actually invite a number of students up to the very front of the room, and they would all play the mating game, and we'd cheer for them and clap for them and see who won the mating game and who lost the mating game. I've been asked not to play it anymore because the mating game's very, very messy. It involves swapping gametes, and people get excited when they play the mating game, and sometimes they drop the gametes all over the floor, and the caretakers have to clean it up. And the mating game can be frustrating because sometimes you can't win the mating game no matter what you do, and so if not everybody's having fun, then nobody's having fun. So I don't play it anymore, but I still think it's useful to go through the rules of the mating game and make some predictions about the patterns we'd see if these rules are in place. Okay, so back in the day, I would invite up about 18 students to the front of the room, and 9 of them would play as males. So I'd give them all a whole lot of gametes, like a sheet of 48 little pretend sperm. And I'd call up another 9 students who would play the role of females, and they would each be given a smaller number of gametes. They'd get some big gametes, some big sheets of paper, but they'd only have like 4 or 5 of them, and those would be their eggs. Now, each of the individuals would also vary in quality. And so the males would have like little blue crowns, and the females would have little pink crowns. And each individual would have anywhere between 1 to 5 dots on their crown. And the more dots they had, the better quality they were. Okay, that was how we used to play the mating game. And so males and females both varied in their quality score. And then how we played was that I'd say, okay, males and females, you guys can fuse your gametes with whoever you want, and then the females would decide which male to accept to accept a gamete from, and then take it over to the laptop and enter it into the laptop and go back to the breeding area. And the males would get to stay in the breeding area and just mate with whoever they wanted. And we had a little spreadsheet like this, and I would be, here's an offspring produced by this female and this male, and this female and this male and this female and this male. And it would keep track of who's mating with who and how many matings each individual is getting and so forth. And it was super fun, super chaotic. Okay. And then at the end, once most of the females had used up most of their gametes, then we would just tally up all the points, and your score would be the number of offspring that you contributed to, sort of weighted by the quality, how many spots on those offspring. And whoever had the highest fitness would win the mating game, and would clap, and I'd give them a little prize, and they'd go off feeling great about themselves, and everyone else would be kind of sad. So, but we don't need to play the mating game to make sensible predictions about, given these rules, what type of player is probably going to have the highest score, who's going to likely win the mating game. I've already told you we've got equal numbers of males and females playing the game. The males all have a lot of gametes. The females don't have as many. Individuals of both sexes vary in their quality. You could think of it as their genetic quality. It's really just how many spots they have on their crown. there one individual or one type of individual that should have a big advantage when the rules of the game are like this? Okay, yeah, very good, very good. I have played the mating game about, I don't know, 20 or 30 times over the years before I was finally instructed to stop playing the mating game for real. And every time, it would indeed be the highest quality male winning the mating game. So if we look at the reproductive success for males, and we've got them ranked from the most spots to the least number of spots here, you can see that this is just a representative year. You can see that the highest ranked male is, leaving everybody else in the dust. The male that is the most attractive or the highest quality does about, in this case, about 4 times as well as the next highest guy, and whereas some males just don't even appear on the scoreboard at all. Okay, great. So from that, we can make a prediction or an inference about potential fitness. And by potential fitness, I mean, if everything goes great for you, is the best performing male going to do better than the best performing female? Let's imagine a male is just able to mate with all the females. Whereas let's imagine a female is able to mate with all the males. Is the potential fitness of the sexes the same or not? Potential fitness being the best possible fitness outcome for an individual of that sex. And very good. The potential fitness, the maximum possible fitness, when the rules of the mating game are like this, is higher for males than it is for females. And this is why the most successful male, I can look up the values from, the most successful male, the last time we played, had a reproductive success of like almost 160 points. The most successful female had a reproductive fitness of about 43 points, which is still pretty good, but it's not in the same zip code as how successful you can be if you are a male. Okay. So that introduces us to the idea of potential fitness. Now, there are winners and there are losers in the mating game. Can you make a prediction about which player or which type of player is probably going to get the lowest score in the mating game? But equal numbers of people playing as males and people playing as females. The males have lots of gametes, the females have few gametes. Now we're not thinking about who's going to do the best, but who's going to do the worst? Who's going to have the absolute lowest fitness? Okay, yeah, awesome. And that is indeed how the mating game plays out. Reliably, it's usually a male that has the lowest possible reproductive success, and almost always it's the lowest quality male. In this case, the two males that were tied for lowest quality had the lowest mating success. Yes?
For lowest quality, what is it meant by the lowest standards?
Oh yeah, what do I mean by the player with the lowest standards? Somebody that just gives their gametes to whoever. Yeah, and doesn't, whereas having higher standards, you might preferentially choose individuals who have like five spots or 4 spots or something. Yeah, so being less picky, is having lower standards. Okay, so that's our mating game. So it's usually going to be a male that wins the mating game. It's usually going to be a male that loses the mating game as well. And most of the females have at least some offspring, have some reproductive success. All of the females are able to get some of the males to mate with them. Not all of the males are able to get females to mate with them, combine gametes with them. Okay, so let's think now about the average fitness of males versus the average fitness of females in this game. Do we expect there to be a sex difference in average fitness? We know that the best possible male is doing great and the worst possible male is doing the worst. On average, should there be a sex difference in fitness, in reproductive success? Potential fitness is higher for males than it is for females. Does that mean that average fitness is going to be higher for males than for females? Well, let's see what you guys think. Okay, oh, actually people think that females have higher fitness on average. Yeah, and most females, we don't have like the big losers happening among the females, but there's also not as many big winners either. On average, males and females playing this game have exactly the same fitness. It's just that there's more variation around that average for males and less variation around that average for females. And if that seems sort of weird or counterintuitive to you, it is, just think of the fact that every individual offspring that is produced has a male parent and a female parent. So the total contribution by males to the next generation is the same as the total contribution by females. It's just that it might be distributed differently. We might have just like a handful of males that are doing really well and some other males that are doing really poorly. So on average, males and females both have equal fitness so long as we have a one-to-one sex ratio, so long as we have like similar numbers of males and females playing the game. So even though there are sex differences in potential fitness, there's no sex difference in average fitness as long as there's equal numbers of males and females contributing to the next generation. And think about that and maybe draw a frequency distribution of average fitness for males and then one for females in your head. If this still makes no sense to you or is confusing, then come to my office hours tomorrow or after reading week, and I can explain it more fulsomely. Okay. So under these rules of the mating game, males have higher potential fitness than females. This turns out to drive a really widespread pattern that we find among a lot of species, including even perhaps our own species. So a lot of work has been done on humans, and in particular, attitudes towards casual sex, or we might call that short-term mating opportunities in humans. And many of these studies, I got to say, were done back in the dirty 80s or the 90s, before we had really robust research ethic boards regulating what sort of studies could be done on undergraduate students. But the simulation I'm going to give you was actually run on the campuses of many university campuses, and they would the experimenters would approach a likely looking student and hit them with this proposition. They would say, "I've seen you around campus and find you very attractive. Would you have sex with me?" And then they'd just wait and see what the person said and write down yes or no. And then I guess they'd debrief them and say, "Oh, actually, psych, it was only an experiment," and walk away. But we can see for the members of this class what people's attitudes would be towards that. Okay, so imagine that you are hit with this opportunity. it's not someone you know asking you this question. It's just some random person, presumably they're another Western student. Say that they are the gender that you are into. Say that they are reasonably attractive, but again, you don't know them. But whichever way you want to answer, yes or no, oops, no. There's actually also an E and an F here. So if you're male, if you identify as male, answer yes or no. If you identify as female, answer C or D. So A or B for the males, C or D for the females. E or F, yes, okay. If you don't fit into either of those categories, just answer E or F, okay? So here we go. So just answer as honestly as possible. Interrogate your values. So research on humans is weird, and this is why I don't do research on humans, but a lot of people do. You're probably thinking, even if we see gender differences here in the way that people answer, how do we know that they are like the product of sexual selection, that they are genetically based as opposed to just the way that we socialize our kids? And you're probably right. Let's take a look at how people answered, first of all. Okay. All right. Okay, so for the other, we don't really have enough data to make a comparison, but for women in the class, we've got a really strong response here. No, this is I'm not interested in this. Most of the males in the class are also answering no, but you see that there's still a sex difference. The overwhelming strength of that no response is much stronger in this group than it is in this group. And so if we repeat the study at different points in time, when attitudes are to short-term mating or casual sex are different, then we get different proportions of people answering yes or no. And if we run the study in different cultures, where there are cultural differences in attitudes to casual sex, that there will be differences in the proportion of people answering yes or no. But what does seem to be robust is that males are relatively more into these opportunities for short-term mating opportunities than females. And we really haven't run these studies with other gender identities, so the jury is still out on that. So why do we see these differences in attitudes, even in our own species, as well as in like lots and lots of other species? It's because sexual reproduction and anisogamy, that difference in gamete size, plus some other things, it places quite different selective forces on males versus females in what is the optimal mating behavior. So this guy here, Mulai Ismail the Bloodthirsty, does anyone know what he's famous for? He was like a king or an emperor or something. But he's famous for being the male human who produced the most offspring that we know of. And over his lifetime, he fathered, it is estimated, 888 children. That's so many. He had many. He was married to many different wives, and I think had some other sexual partners as well. He was just killing it if your currency of how fit you are is how many children you produce. And this is a picture of the woman. We actually don't know her name. We know that she was a Russian peasant or farmer woman. But this is sort of representative of the female human who produced the most offspring. And any guesses how many offspring she had, how many children she gave birth to in her life? 4? No, it's higher than that. 20? 116, in between 20 and 116. It was 69. Nice. No, she had, so there were obviously some multiple births here. She gave rise to some twins, maybe a few sets of triplets even, and probably spent a lot of her reproductive years being pregnant. So again, for males, even in our own species, potential fitness of males in humans is much greater than the potential fitness of females. And so when potential fitness is higher for males than it is for females, which is most of the time in most species, what is the best way, if you're a male and all you care about is maximizing your number of offspring you produce, what's the best way to do that? You can just yell it out. It's not rude. This is a biology class. Yeah, be indiscriminate. Just mate with as many females as you can, right? So you want to maximize the quantity of individuals you mate with. If you are a male, that is arguably the best way to get your genes into the next generation. Is that same strategy going to work for a female? No. What would be a better strategy for a female? Yes? Yes, exactly. If you can't maximize quantity, you want to maximize the quality of your offspring. And so you can be very choosy and mate with the best possible male. Okay? That is how females would typically maximize their fitness. Okay. And so for the majority of animal species, we can think about this sort of very simplistic binary. For a typical male, again, sperm is cheap, so parental investment, the amount that it costs each male to produce an offspring, is usually pretty low. That's not always true. Maybe males provide a lot of parental care to their offspring, but for the most part, the sort of classic mating system, males have low parental investment. Because of that, the potential fitness of males is high. And so it's worth it for males to compete for mates and not be picky. Whereas for females, in sort of a typical species, even if a female doesn't provide parental care to her offspring after laying the egg, just producing that egg itself is costly. So parental investment is high, or higher than that of males for most species. And so females typically have lower potential fitness than males do, as we've seen in the mating game, as we saw in the example with the two very successful humans. So parental investment is high. That means potential fitness is going to be low. That means the best way to maximize your fitness is to be picky, to be choosy about your mates. And this is why in most species, males compete and females choose. We say that sexual selection usually works on males, not on females. And yes, I'll get to the examples to that, or the counterexamples to that. But first, you may be wondering what kind of thing, what do you mean choosy? Like what makes a good mate? Why would an individual benefit from being choosy? And there's a number of things that we might be looking for in a mate. Sometimes males actually provide what we call direct benefits, either to the female that they mate with or to the offspring. So a male might control access to a territory. They might bring food to the babies or food to the females. They might help to fight off predators in these flies. For example, male flies will sometimes bribe a female to mate with them and bring them. It's called the nuptial gift, but it's just like another dead bug. And if the female mates with a male, then he gives her the bug. So that's a direct benefit. It's just like a material thing. A good male will give me something good. sometimes females are choosy, they're picky about which males they mate with, even though the males don't give them anything, even though the males only contribute sperm and then the females are back on their own. And that could still be favored if the attractive males, say the males that can build the nice bowers or the males that can sing the nice songs or whatever, if the attractive males are genetically superior to the unattractive males. So females could get good genes for their offspring, even if genes are all the male contributes. And a great example of this is in tree frogs, which we have breeding around here. And some male tree frogs sing a song. It sounds like a little trill. And some males are really good at it, and they can produce a nice long song. And other males can only produce a short song, and it's not as attractive. And if you compare the offspring of males that are good singers to the offspring that are fathered by a male who's a bad singer, it turns out that baby tree frogs whose dad was a good singer survive better than the baby tree frogs whose dad was a bad singer, even though the males aren't actually taking care of them at all. So it's probably something, a genetic difference in quality that is being passed on to the offspring. And finally, a third way in which you could benefit by mating with somebody that's attractive compared to somebody that's unattractive is an idea known as the sexy sons idea. So let's say that maybe it's a population of guppies, and females in this population just really like the color orange. Sometimes there are just arbitrary preferences, and orange is like really sexy if you're a guppy. And blue is really sexy if you're like a particular species of bird. But we'll stick with the guppies, and orange is sexy. Orange doesn't make you better at surviving. It's just kind of neutral, just that everyone likes orange, okay? If you're a female and you mate with a bright orange male, then your sons are going to be orange, and so your sons are going to be attractive, and so they will presumably be able to provide you with lots of grandbabies. So just having sexy sons can be an advantage, even if these female preferences are completely arbitrary and the attractive males aren't genetically better than unattractive males. So these are some things that a choosy individual might be looking at. Okay, so up until now, we've been talking about anisogamy means that females invest a lot and males don't invest hardly anything in their offspring. And that's why sex roles are the way they are. That's why females are picky and males compete with each other. That's not always the case, because there are some sexes in which males are actually doing most of the parental care. So if you think of things like pipefish or seahorse, or some of these tropical birds like phalaropes or hasanas, yes, females are producing the eggs, and eggs are more expensive than sperm, it's true. But after females produce the eggs, then the males take over and they take care of they gestate the baby seahorses in their pouch, or they scoop up, they incubate the eggs if they're a hasana, and scoop up the babies under their wings. That's the little, it looks like that guy is like sitting on a spider on the right. No, those are his babies, and his baby's toes are like hanging down from under his armpits where he's sheltering them. Males are doing almost all the work. So males are actually investing more in the offspring than females are. And we call these sex role reversed species. So even though eggs are still expensive and sperm is still cheap, the male does all these other things, and so overall, per offspring, the male is investing more than the female. And in these sex role reversed species, we see females are larger bodied, or they're more ornamented, and they compete with other females for access to males, and they will sort of mate with they're more indiscriminate in their choice of males. And males are very picky. Males are like, well, which is the best female for me? Okay, you. So, and so this just illustrates the fact that it's not something inherent. It's not always the fact that males compete and females choose. Instead, it's the sex that has lower parental investment. The low investing sex competes for access to the high investing sex. Usually that means males compete for females, but in species like this, females are the low investing sex and they compete for access to males, the high investing sex. And the only other question that's maybe remaining in your mind is what about all those species where both males and females actually invest a lot in parental care? And this is true in a lot of bird species. Actually, about 90% of bird species, both males and females, invest a lot in protecting and feeding and incubating their offspring. And in humans as well, we do the same. Most of us probably have two parents, many of us have two parents that both contributed very heavily to our upbringing. In this case, sexual selection operates on both sexes. So both sexes will compete for access to their preferred members of the opposite sex, and both sexes will be picky. Neither males nor females will be just completely indiscriminate and mating with whoever, for the most part. And if we look at mating preferences, what might humans be looking for in a mate? There's been a lot of interest in what are females looking for really fundamentally different things than males? There's really much more area of similarity and overlap between the sexes than there are sex differences. So, traits that humans prioritize when looking for a partner would be things like intelligence or a compatible sense of humor, or somebody that's, kind to your family or gets along with your friends, but also things like physical attractiveness. So both males and females prefer to mate with individuals that are physically attractive. A huge predictor of what makes someone physically attractive in humans and in other animals turns out to be symmetry, having like bilateral symmetry in your face and in your body. Presumably this is an indicator of genetic quality. Are there differences between male and female humans in what they might be looking for? A little bit. So if we break down, okay, if we consider the fact that sometimes we are evaluating somebody as a long-term mate, would I want to marry this person? Would I want to spend my whole life with them? Versus, am I evaluating this person as a potential short-term mate, maybe just like a really casual hookup? There's some theories that females should be prioritizing different qualities, whereas in their short-term mates, maybe they want somebody that's very physically attractive, like marathon meme guy, or possessing good genes, whereas for longer-term mates, perhaps direct benefits or financial stability or social position become more important. For males, some people have theorized that male humans have very different standards. They may be much more choosy when evaluating a long-term mate, but much less picky when it comes to taking up options for short-term mating opportunities. Anyway, that's all I had to say about sexual selection. These are sort of the take-home themes here. Oh, happy reading week. Happy reading week almost. I think you'll be getting your exam